Hey, welcome to the series of everything you need to know about Python in simplest possible way. In the series of pattern printing, so far we have seen so many patterns. In our previous video, we have seen one of the patterns which involves numbers. This video, what we will be doing is that we will try to print this particular pattern. So, if you carefully see here, we have 5 rows here. To print this particular pattern, what I will be doing is that first I will be taking a rows with 5 value. So because we have 5 rows, right? So for that reason, I am taking the value of rows to 5. So next what I will be doing is that I will take a variable spaces, because if you see here, apart from these numbers, we are also having spaces before these numbers. Without actually using these spaces, without actually printing the spaces before this particular numbers, we don't get this particular pattern. For that reason, what I will be doing is that I will take the space variable to keep track of the spaces. So for that, initially what I will be doing is that I will take the spaces value as rows minus 1, because later if we change the value of rows, the spaces would not be affected. So because of that reason, I will be taking the spaces as rows minus 1. If you see here, out of 5 positions, we have 5 positions here. So which of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out of 5 positions, one position is occupied by number and remaining positions are uh, which excluded by number. For that reason, I am taking rows minus 1 to the variable of spaces. So now what we will be doing is that if you see here, we have 5 rows, right? To get these 5 rows, what I will be doing is that I will use a for loop. So that is what we generally do. We use loops whenever we have a repeated statement. So for that, I will use for I in range. I will generate a range of values from 1 to rows plus 1. Because if I simply mention rows, it won't go till rows. For that reason, I am mentioning rows plus 1. So instead of this for loop, what I will be doing is that I will take, if you see here, yeah, and let us first understand what we are having inside of this for loop. So for that, I will print the value of I. So we will be getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we don't actually want this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we are actually needed this particular pattern. For that reason, what I will be doing is that if you carefully see here, on each line we have the value of 1, 2, here we have 2. Like this, we are having the values exactly, but we need more numbers. In first row, we need one value. In the second row, we need two values. In the third row, we need three values. So the only thing what we need to do is that we need to define these numbers based on this particular I value. So because we are getting these values from I only, right? So for that, what I will be doing is that if you see here, these are all repeated statements. 1, 2 is repeated 2 times, 3 is repeated 3 times. What we do generally when we have repeated statements, you guessed it correct. We use loops. For that reason, what I will be doing is that I will use one more loop inside of this particular outer for loop. I am using j here. For j in range, I will start with 1. I will go till I plus 1, because based on the I value only, we are getting this particular values, right? For that reason, I am going till the value of I plus 1. So by mentioning I plus 1, I will be going till I. For that reason, I am mentioning I plus 1. Instead of this for loop, I am just printing the value of I. So if I execute this, I am getting all these values, but we are not getting the pattern that what we wanted. So for that reason, what I will be doing is that I will mention an end here. So by default, this print statement having end of a new line character. To replace new line character with spaces, I am mentioning this. So if I execute this, I will be getting everything in a single line. So this is also not what we wanted. We want something different. So for that reason, I will mention a print statement after completion and after executing this inner for loop. As and when it comes out of this inner for loop, I will be printing a new line character. If I execute this, still we don't get the actual patterns. Let's execute this first. So we are getting this pattern, but we want this particular pattern. So as I mentioned earlier, we need to use these spaces. Without actually using these spaces, we won't get this pattern. For that reason, what I will be doing is that as and when I enter into the inner for loop, which is of outer for loop, which is a first for loop that what we have here, what I will be doing is that I will print a space multiplying with how many number of spaces that we are having. So I will also mention an end nothing. So after that, if I execute this, we are actually by string multiplication, we are actually mention how many number of spaces that we wanted. So by mentioning rows minus one, we will be getting the spaces here. If I execute this, still we don't get the actual pattern. We will fix that as well. So now I'm getting the spaces, every spaces before this particular thing. So if you carefully see here, in this pattern, we are reducing the spaces on each iteration on each row. For that reason, what I need to do, what we need to do is that we need to decrement the value of spaces on each iteration iteration of this outer for loop. For that reason, what I will be doing is that I will mention spaces minus equal to 1. By mentioning this statement, we are reducing the spaces on each iteration by 1. If I execute this, can see the output, we are actually getting the actual pattern that what we wanted here. So I hope you have understood the whole logic to generate this pattern. So let me explain one more time if you have confused anywhere. So we have identified that in this pattern we have 5 rows. For that reason I have mentioned 5. Later we will take dynamically. So we have also identified before these numbers we are having spaces. For that reason I am mentioning a spaces variable with by initializing how many number of rows minus 1. Later, to generate these rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, we are using this outer for loop with I in range of, we are getting a range of values from the number which is starting value of 1 with 2, how many number of rows that we are having. So inside of this, we are printing spaces because before actually printing the number, we need to print the spaces to get this pattern. For that reason, we are printing the spaces using string multiplication. By mentioning this end, it will don't go to the next line, it will stay in the same line itself. For that reason only I am mentioning this end. So later in this inner for loop, what I am doing is that we have identified that these values of this pattern which belongs to, which can get from this I value only. For that reason we are generating a range of values from 1 the value of I. We are storing the values in j and we are iterating through a for loop here. So later we will be printing the value of I to get this whole pattern. In the end, we are we are mentioning a spaces the end to not to go to new line but to stay in the same line itself by having a single space. So if by mentioning this, we are actually dividing pattern not to get everything in a single line but the pattern that what we needed like this. For that reason, we are mentioning a print statement to get the new line after completion of every inner for loop. So at the end, we are mentioning a spaces minus equal to 1. So as we have observed in the pattern, the spaces are decreased on each iteration. For that reason, we are mentioning spaces minus equal to 1. So now I hope you have understood this logic to generate this pattern. So if you found this video interesting, hit the like button. The next video, we will see how we can actually generate this particular pattern. So to stay updated, subscribe to this channel and hit the notifications so that whenever I upload any video, you will get the notification. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.